Hello everyone, and welcome and thank you for joining me in this video. Today I want to talk about the type of communication barriers that we normally have in any type of relationship that we have with everyone around us. It is not hard to see that most of us struggle with communicating, especially when it comes to openly talking about our general needs or what it is that we need from others. It ends up becoming stressful for you if you are unable to fully express and communicate your needs with, say, your employer or coworker and even casual friends. And it can also become detrimental to the romantic relationships that we have with others, because these are the people that we ideally have entrusted our lives with to look after us and take care of us in our emotional and physical needs. And if we feel and sense, even for a little bit, that we cannot get across to them to relate with us whenever we need them to, this can damage even long existing relationships. So let us start from the beginning. You see, everything we display as adults, this includes but not limited to our behaviors, personalities, habits, everything we say we are is just a coping persona, an adaptation that we developed from childhood. We never truly grow up, we just adapt. So all the struggles we are now facing as adults, I can assure you that almost all of them originate from our childhood. Your childhood has almost all the answers for why you are the way you are. In the most part, your behavioral patterns are heavily affected by how you were brought up and the environment you were exposed to growing up. Having said that, you will notice that as children, we are not really taught how to express or communicate. Everything is provided for us, and in return, we're supposed to just be okay, be grateful, and let the grown-ups take care of us in whatever way that they believe is best for us. If as a child you have a complaint or a grievance or a concern, you cannot really express it in a way that you would be taken seriously or even given the attention that you would prefer to get. Therefore, you adapt and communicate in the most or in the best way that you have observed gets you the attention that you need. Children adapt rather quickly, and you need to realize they have nothing better to do except observe and study the adults around them. By observing these adults, they develop ways to manipulate, and children mostly will trick, flatter, and people please, and all these can be displays of manipulation tactics. They do this in order to get their needs met. So if you really think about it, children are in the most vulnerable position. That is undeniable. They're fully dependent on the adults around them to provide their every need. That will work, or that can only work perfectly if you have reliable adults who are attentive and pay attention to your every need. What do you think happens if you have unpredictable, moody, or unstable adults? Therefore, if they don't adapt to the behavior patterns of the adults around them, they most definitely will not have their most basic needs met. So they have to study you, they have to observe you, so they're able to predict your feelings and read your emotions, so they're able to match with you to get what they need from you, which is, as simplicity would have it, love and acceptance. I want you to think back when you were a child. You weren't really asked for an opinion or told how to express your opinions, were you? You just learned from observing the grown-ups around you, who also were never told how to communicate from people who do know how to either. So we just carry along all these parenting styles, not because they are what we think will benefit our children, but because that is what we are familiar with. That is how our parents raised us. And look at us, we turned out just fine. Therefore, it must be correct. But are you really fine, in all honesty? If your parents flogged you as a child, you most likely will flog yours, because discipline is vital, correct? Well, discipline might be vital, but flogging isn't. Flogging isn't the only way to discipline every child that you come across. It just isn't. There are other ways which you can discipline a child. Alright, let's get back on track. I'll give you an example. As a child growing up, I obviously observed my late mother and discovered she would really be bothered if any of us children do not eat our food. And when we go to bed on an empty stomach, it really bothered her. She did not like it at all. She made sure we were properly fed before we go to bed. So I knew this growing up. And if I was upset with something, someone, or even her, instead of telling her directly what is bothering me, because, remember, children are mostly not asked for their opinion, let alone listened to, and are most of the times just dismissed. So I had to find a way to communicate with her in a way that she would be bound to listen to me and pay attention to my needs without risking her dismissing me. Therefore, I would go to bed and not show up for dinner. I wouldn't have to wait for long, I can tell you that. There she would come, my guardian angel, coming up to save me as always. So that is also an example of manipulation, by the way. So this pattern never stops just because you think you've grown up now. We never really grow up. This pattern is still there, and it will just show up in different forms. But I know I still do it sometimes, knowingly, most of the times, but mostly I do it unknowingly. This is also one of the reasons why most relationships suffer, because people do not know how to directly communicate their needs to the others, or to the other person. We assume they must know us, just like my mother knew me as a child. I was her child, and she sensed my pain if I showed her the right signals, and she would be there. But you need to consciously tell that part of you that won't let you communicate that your partner is not your mother or your father. They do not know you like that, even though you want them to. They don't. So don't expect your spouse or best friend or even your employer to read your mind or guess what might be wrong or bothering you. That's when you start giving each other mixed signals, and the communication gets lost in translation, and the rest just becomes complete confusion. Most couples' relationships will deteriorate because no one is communicating to the other, and because of that, all problems stem from that one problem. And you find the situation escalating because both of you are now responding to each other's reactions. For instance, I feel like my partner is not helping me enough around the home. I am a working mother who has to work, say, 9 to 4. And then I have to come home and take care of everything around the home. I feel that I need a hand with maybe making dinner or help with the children or something. I just need help because everything is wearing me down and I feel drained to spare, energy to give to my children and my partner. It sounds simple and reasonable enough, right? Well, instead of just saying to my partner, darling, listen, could you please start helping me with this or that and communicate my needs coherently like you normally do when you're ordering Chinese takeaway on the phone and you want to make sure they don't get your order wrong. What most people do instead is they moan. They come home angry. They appear angry. snapping at everything or everyone in their way. And this is a common one. They make indirect comments about, anything, yelling at the kids and all that kind of stuff. These indirect subtle communications go back to your childhood, where you felt powerless to express your needs because you were told no, you can't have that, or no, we're your parents, therefore we know what's best for you. Or worse, you were completely dismissed, thereby invalidating your genuine concern. So, you've attached any form of direct communication to come with a negative response, somewhat a rejection, a dismissal, even an invalidation. And you're afraid of experiencing that again because it triggers you. It reminds you of how powerless you were as a child and how powerless you feel you still are now. You're afraid of being told no and being powerless and not being able to do anything about it. And as I mentioned before, we never really grow. So now it becomes an attention-seeking challenge where you don't even care anymore what sort of attention you need from them anymore. What you need is attention from your partner. You need them to pay attention to your emotions, to see how you're hurting, how much you need their help. Therefore, you communicate in the best way you believe is more likely to get you a reaction from your partner. And you don't care if it's a negative reaction or a positive reaction. All you need is to get their attention so they can address your needs. Children will always know how to get their parents' or guardians' attention. They know exactly which buttons to press to get a reaction from them. They know when to be naughty. They know when to throw a tantrum. They do this to get your attention so you meet their needs, because that is the only way that they have learned to communicate, and they know will get them instant attention. If they notice they get attention by being ill, believe me, they would do exactly that. Every behavior is a learned and an adaptation of a need you require to be met. But unfortunately, we find ourselves as adults who still don't know how to communicate. Simple needs, but we still don't know how to communicate to our partners in our relationships, and therefore we suffer in silence. And when you decide to communicate to your partner using subtle signals about being, moody or stropping and hoping they notice, what that does is simply just confuse the partner. And if that partner happens to be a man, well, good luck. He will just avoid you. You are better off just expressing what it is that you need from them, but you won't, because you're afraid you might get a no. So you don't want that to happen. You don't want your needs to be rejected or dismissed by your partner. You don't want to be rejected by your partner, so instead you strop. Just a simple need will now start a chain reaction. From the start, you felt burdened by other responsibilities that you have to take care of and shoulder, both outside and inside the home. So you're now moody. You're always angry and distant, hoping your partner will notice your change in mood or attitude and address the need. But instead, he doesn't. He also grows distant. He avoids you and barely talks to you now. Later on, you avoid each other, and both of you will redirect your attention from each other, because what's the point, right? So you will either direct your attention to your children or something else but each other, and then it's all downhill from that. From her perspective as the woman, what she sees is an emotionally unattentive man who doesn't pay attention to her emotional needs. Is distant, cold, and maybe adding lazy, and doesn't help her around the house. Lets her do everything by herself. She doesn't feel loved and cared for. She is a victim in this arrangement, stuck with a selfish, and caring man, and possibly she would just have to stay with him for the sake of the children or the house. I don't know. People have all sorts of reasons at this point. And from his perspective, as the man, what he sees is a woman who he loves but has suddenly changed. She is distant and cold towards him and doesn't seem to need him anymore. He has tried to give her the space he thought she might need or she needed, but still she keeps pulling away, giving him nothing. She is always moody and angry all the time, and he has just decided to keep his distance. Perhaps she doesn't feel love towards him anymore, and he is just a victim in this arrangement, stuck with a woman who is no longer in love with him. He will just stay for the sake of the children. First things first, know thyself. Be very sure of what it is that you want, and therefore you will be able to define what it is you need from others and express and communicate accordingly. It becomes hard for most to communicate their needs to others because they don't know or are not sure what it is that they really need from themselves, let alone are able to tell what they require from others. As an example, if you suffer from insecurity, you need to be aware you have insecurities and what that insecurity is and what you need from others to address that insecurity. That way, you will be able to communicate fully to your partner that you need constant validation from them. You need to be aware and be very honest with yourself as not to have shame and think your need is small or insignificant or that your partner will judge you for it. If they chose to be with you, it must mean they love and care for you or your needs, no matter how silly or insignificant they are. So don't be ashamed or afraid. Tell them exactly what it is that you need from them. If they reject or invalidate your need, then you will have your answer either way. I mean, why stay with someone if they don't love you? That will be a sign to course correct. Consider to start over. Direct communication is key. It is how we are able to express our passion, our feelings and emotions to others. It is how we let others in and allow them to understand and relate with us and to meet us at our most vulnerable point and care for us. This need doesn't just go away, and it is very normal to be this way. It is not wrong or shameful to want others to understand us and be there for us and with us. It is all part of being human and all part of this human experience. A relationship is a two-way street. It requires both of you to communicate with each other clearly so as not to crash into each other. I hope this has been insightful, and as always, stay safe.